Welcome to our fireside chat. Today's topic is diversity in financial careers, the private equity pathway. And I'm delighted to introduce Katherine Relle. Katherine is a US-based development director and joined Headway Capital in 2025. Prior to that, she worked in the private equity division of a US nonprofit, as well as at a US healthcare buyout fund. She previously spent a decade at JP Morgan Chase as a portfolio manager in their private equity group in New York. She also held roles at the firm in corporate strategy and product management. Katherine received a Master of Business Administration from Columbia Business School, where she was a private equity fellow. She also received a Master of Science with high honors in governance from the London School of Economics and a Bachelor of Arts magna cum laude in government from Georgetown University. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here today.
Great. Well, I really like your background. Could you tell us about how you studied at the London School of Economics, what it was like to study and work outside the US?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought it was a great experience. I actually did a year in undergrad abroad at the LSE and decided I liked it so much that I wanted to go back for my master's degree. And I felt like I was among some of the smartest minds in the world, bringing in a number of influences and opinions and information from around the world. So a lot of different. Um, a lot of different minds to learn from there and a lot of different professors as well from different walks of life. Also, the LSE, of course, is known for their modules and their courses in finance and financial services. So, a really great place to start a career in finance and kind of build from there. And to this day, I'm still very involved in the alumni community. I'm hosting an alumni event in Miami, Florida for the LSE tonight. And just another opportunity to learn from people around the world who have been around the world and, have influences from different firms and walks of life.
Well, that sounds like some great networking you do. Can you elaborate more on how you network and maybe discuss some of the great organizations that Amanda Pullinger has spearheaded?
Yeah, I think there's some really great organizations out there, and I think networking in 2025 has come a long way given all of the online networking that we can all do today. You mentioned Amanda Pullinger, and I think her organization, Global Female Investor Network, is a great one. There are women from all over the world in investment seats who want to learn how to become a better investor or who want to share their investment skill set and strategy with others, and even some that want to break into the investing world. And I think that is a really great starting place to just learn from some of the best and minds from like I said around the world, and as is in the name, Global Female Investor Network. There's also some more localized groups that I like. One is called New York Private Equity Network. That one is very specific to the PE markets and in New York City. They do a number of events, and that's a really good chance to get together in person with some of the people that I work with. There are organizations like ACG, there's also Kaya or the CFA, and they all have a lot of networking arms to them as well. Some, virtual events as well as in various different cities in which these organizations operate. So all are ones that I recommend to people if you want to hop into networking and get started, really good places to just start meeting people.
Well, it sounds like the experiences you had in networking certainly helped to be at great schools like the London School of Economics and Columbia. How did that help transition your career into private equity? Like, what motivated that change?
Yeah, so I spent, as you mentioned, about a decade at JP Morgan. Did a couple of different things there, but spent the majority of my time in the private equity group as a limited partner investor. And while I was there, I concurrently did my MBA at Columbia Business School. in their private equity program. So having those influences of being able to learn at the same time that I was working in the field really influenced me wanting to be on the general partner side and just learning all there is to know about the private equity ecosystem, who the key players are, what the different types of funds there are, and kind of the differences between the mega fund model and more on the lower middle market side. So being able to very specifically study private equity at Columbia was really what instigated that kind of change and me committing to a future career in private equity. And while I was at JP Morgan, I also had opportunity to focus a lot on the emerging manager space, as well as in tandem with that, the independent sponsor space, which is 100% what we focus on at Headway Capital. So all those influences and inputs around that time really influenced where I am today and why I love doing what I do every day.
Well, that makes perfect sense because Headway, as you said, do they have a specialization area within private equity?
Yeah, so our strategy is to invest very specifically alongside independent sponsors in the deals that they do. For those who aren't familiar, an independent sponsor is a private equity sponsor basically doing deals on a deal by deal basis outside of a private equity fund. What we like about that model is that incentives are really aligned to maximize value in each deal that the sponsor is doing, as opposed to feeling the need to deploy, a fund when maybe the deals that you're seeing are not as high quality. So a lot of good things about the model, but that's one of the main reasons that many people do like the independent sponsor model, and one of the reasons why we like it at Headway.
Well, I think that's a great example of how your experience can serve our students well because about 80% of our students are working and attending our school. And so you described that you were at JP Morgan while attending Columbia, and I'm sure both of these took a lot of time. How did going to school coordinate with your work? Like, how did you approach what you wanted to get out of school and how you directed some of that to new challenges at work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when you do when there's a lot on your plate, sometimes you found hours that you didn't know you had. It's definitely a lot to go to work and school both full time. But I think it is worth it if you can see the synergies in the work that you're doing and what you're studying at school. And as I mentioned, going into school sort of with an action plan and a very specific curriculum that you want to study for me was really important. And I would recommend that to anyone on that path, especially, outside of undergrad when everything you do kind of matters a little bit more. There's a little bit more ROI that you're looking for when you're putting X amount of money down for a business school degree, for example. So being able to sort of incubate your ideas and like learn in a targeted approach in school to what you need to know for your role at work is a really good way to kind of kill two birds with one stone, if you will, and maximize value. Also, like when I was at Columbia, I was able to build a really good network. Speaking of networks, and some of the people that I sat next to in class are the people that I share deals with today, or the people that help me on the value creation side within the private equity world, and some of the peripheral vendors even within the private equity world that I work with. So being able to use the network that you're kind of buying into, but also cultivating while you're at business school in real time is really that value that I think business school is meant for, and will enable you to just do a better job in your day to day, and also get what you're looking for and get what you're seeking when you go to a business school.
Well, that's great. I mean, could you elaborate maybe on what some of those aha moments were while you were at university and working full time?
Yeah, I think one of the aha moments was really, sitting in a class focused on deal generation and case studies within the private equity space, and looking to one of my classmates sitting next to me and him really sharing a deal with me and me saying, you know what, I think I want to bring this to my team and see if this is something that we might be interested in. And for me, that was an aha. Like I'm taking the work that I'm doing out of the classroom and bringing it into my life and my day to day. And whether or not I do this deal, this is the value that we just spoke about, and that was an aha moment for me.
Great. Well, this sounds like a really traditional path of schools and networking. Can you give advice on how one might get into private equity, perhaps through a traditional path? But some of our students are mid-career, and maybe you could also touch on non-traditional ways they might get into private equity.
Yes, definitely. So that is a really good point. There is a very traditional path into the private equity world, and this has been built over, a couple decades. 2025, getting into, a seat at a mega fund really does look like something that starts from your freshman year of college, recruiting out of your junior year into an investment bank, doing your 2 years as a banker, doing your pre-MBA associate role, going to business school, post-MBA associate role, and then kind of climbing that corporate ladder. Of course, some people realize they want to be in private equity after, the first 5 years of that ladder that I just spoke about. So, how can you break into it? And this is something that, I think about a lot and talk about a lot with some of my peers in the business world who are interested in private equity. And there are different ways. I think, first of all, it's about branding yourself and what value you can add to a fund. For example, do you have a really operational skill set, in which case you could join a fund on the value creation side? Or do you have an expertise in healthcare, in which case you can be that value add to a healthcare fund where you can due diligence on deals from an MD perspective, a medical doctor's perspective. So all these different ways on sort of how to brand yourself and how that could be an entry point for you into a fund. Also understanding the ecosystem on which funds actually have capacity to bring on new people. Typically I recommend to people who are looking to join a fund to look at which funds are fundraising, because those funds are the funds that need to be deployed. So those are the funds that are going to have a need to bring on additional people, and then understanding where you might fit in that ecosystem. Do you have an investor skill set and an investor mindset? Are you more on the operational side? Maybe you're on the IR side, et cetera. So there's a lot that goes into sort of figuring out where you may fit in to the broader ecosystem. And there are entry points like understanding who is hiring, but also understanding and being realistic about whether you should be looking at a mega fund or maybe something in the lower middle market. And another great place that I recommend for people is to look at spin outs from large mega funds, because typically there's more room for growth at some of those funds. Those are often called emerging managers. And they've come out of large fund ecosystems and they're trying to build a brand. And it's almost this entrepreneurial mindset of being able to kind of get in early and take maybe a larger piece of the pie from an incentive perspective, and really carve out a niche for yourself in that particular strategy. So something to look for. And then lastly, if you're really interested in private equity on the deal side, I think becoming an independent sponsor could be a really interesting path forward. And that's really just doing deals on a deal by deal basis and proving your track record. And potentially you do want to start a fund from there. So a couple different points: emerging manager, independent sponsor, understanding the ecosystem and where you fit in, and understanding if you're an investor versus a value creation person or something in the middle. But there are definitely ways to enter this industry outside of that traditional pathway. And I think it's exciting to think through how you would plan your strategy. And I think business school, back to that point, or school in general, is a great place to incubate those ideas and figure out, what your action plan will be.
Wow, a lot of great points on that. I appreciate especially that you have this perspective of an ecosystem. This is what we try to convey in our curriculum in that different there's buy side, sell side, and spot contracts and derivative contracts. And within any industry, it helps to get a system view. And you've really done that well and explained it as an ecosystem. And I'm wondering if we could talk about the different types of private equity and demographics and that how diversity can help shape the next generation of leaders in private equity.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you ask anyone in the private equity world, they'll say diversity of thought is one of the most important things in an investment committee. You want people from different walks of life. You want people who've had different experiences to be able to opine on the investment strategy to really understand if it's something that is going to work. Sometimes I sit in an investment committee reviewing a product and I ask myself, like, have I actually used this product before? If the answer is no, I should go out and try the product immediately. Some of those are more, easier said than done, but yeah, there's just a real preference for having a number of different inputs and data points when evaluating a high stakes decision, which is often one made in an investment committee. So that's just on kind of diversity in general, but also I think there's definitely room in the industry for democratization of access to the asset class. And you see that with a number of large mega funds, for example, creating quote unquote retail access to investors. And so that's from the investor point of view, but then also from just an industry point of view and people wanting to work in the industry, democratization of access to information in order to become an investment professional. And you see that a lot with organizations and even online programs such as Wall Street Oasis, Wall Street Prep, Financeable. Anyone can sign online and join one of these platforms and learn how to do an LBO model. Or learn, a three-statement analysis, or even basic technical tools within the private equity industry. There are also broader organizations like Alt Finance, MLT, and others that focus on economic mobility, and part of that is being able to land a role within a private equity firm or something in financial services where you can fundamentally change the aspects of your community by your being able to be successful in one of these roles. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at diversity within financial services and private equity more specifically, and a lot of different projects going on highlighting that and allowing people, at the end of the day, access, which is really important.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because I think private equity is getting a greater role in impact. Is there any example you could give about how they're doing some disruptive work or in improving sustainability or other aspects of impact?
Yeah, another thing that I really love about private markets in general is I do think there is something for everyone, and I think there are a number of different strategies that continue to evolve and build upon previous strategies. And I think there are a lot of different capital providers out there too, looking for different strategies. So, talking about just having a diverse portfolio and portfolio construction and investing in things that are interesting to you. And that is all something, the private markets have to offer. I think in particular, you have a lot of mission-driven foundations or endowments that are looking for some sort of impact strategy. And then you have, the just overarching criteria of ESG, environment, governance, and environment, social, and governance aspects that we have now to evaluate different investment opportunities. And so I think speaking of ecosystem, that sub-ecosystem within the private markets in general has been built out over the past 5 to 10 years with very core metrics so that we can quantitatively understand the value that and the returns that one can get from these strategies. But also, like I said, they align with mission, the missions of the underlying organizations that are interested in investing in them. So there's definitely room for that. I'm happy to see that it continues to grow, and I'm happy to see that the capital providers who are interested in those investments have opportunity and access to those as well.
Wow, with all these opportunities, students will need to be very well prepared. And it seems like a combination of quantitative skills to justify investments and to hit KPIs, as well as qualitative skills. Can you talk about some of the combination of those? Because private equity is a long game. It is not a high frequency trading type of strategy. It's quite the opposite, where there's very long standing relationships that can take years. Maybe you discuss on the J curve, but it's quite different from what some might think of as short transactions.
Yes, that is also a very, very good point that I love talking about. So if you think about the private equity industry compared to, other industries that may have high turnover, private equity does not. And part of the reason for that is that 5 to 10 year J curve. In order to see an exit from an investment and capital that you've put in the ground, it typically takes 5 to 10 years. Something may go south before it goes north, but ultimately you want to get to the top of the J, and that means value has been created, and you want to exit the asset and get a return. Given the time frame for that and the incentives aligned with the investor, investors like to sit around for a while and not change jobs very often, so that they can see the fruit of their labor. They can see the investments that they've created come to fruition. So for those reasons, being in this industry is very much a people industry, as it is sort of a quantitative metrics industry. And I say, while you have some of the smartest people in the industry from a quantitative perspective, there's also that hugely qualitative element where there is this network you need to build. If you ask any investor launching a fund, you'll probably, one of the questions you may ask them is about their proprietary sourcing network. What makes you able to find deals that other people cannot find? And typically that has to do with having a really, really good network and having calculated ways to utilize that network. Do you have a quarterly breakfast with a group of people that share investment ideas? Do you attend conferences? Do you have a Rolodex of people who will send deals your way? And I think this goes back to the point that we made earlier about having a global community around you, or at least the community in which you plan to work in, whether that's kind of more localized, but just having casting a wide net to people, whether that's online or in person, and being that go-to person for deal sourcing, and the person that people think of when they have something that may be interesting from an investment perspective. So that's all the qualitative side, and I think that is often almost harder to cultivate sometimes than the quantitative technical side, where you just sit in front of a computer and practice many, many times how to do financial modeling. So there's no kind of roadmap on how to create the perfect network. But I think by just trial and error, showing up, giving back to the communities that we previously discussed, like GFIN and others, you do continuously hone that qualitative network that you're building.
Well, that's great. Maybe we can synthesize these into a few practical insights about communities you'd recommend, or specific resources, or how interested students in private equity could prepare for a pathway into the industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think for people who, have no exposure, a really good, but you're interested in the industry, a really good starting point is just reading some news, articles and platforms that I recommend are PE Hub, PE News, PitchBook. There's a online newsletter called Private Equity Career News, which has a lot of good information around who's launching a fund, what spin outs are happening. And that goes back to my point about just keeping kind of your finger on the pulse of when a fund is being launched. I also really like a newsletter called Finimize and ExecSum as well. I think they do a really good job of doing a daily download of all the different deals happening in the industry and in private markets in general, including venture capital and credit. I think from a training perspective, I mentioned earlier, and I'll re-mention, I think Wall Street Prep, Wall Street Oasis, and Financeable are great platforms to practice your skill set. And then I think also, while I don't necessarily recommend, having to go get the degrees if you don't need them, but the CFA and the Kaya both have a lot of really great resources on their websites where you can just, download the study guide and start learning. So many, many different places. Also, higher education and many places to find this. But in the spirit of democratization and just easy access and turning on your computer, there's a lot that you can immediately get your hands on to learn more about the private markets.
You're also a great example of mentoring, and maybe you could give some advice for our students that may have a little bit of experience, how they might mentor others as well as perhaps find a mentor.
Yeah, I think mentoring is really important. And I think, the easiest way to start is just looking around you. Do you have, other people in your organization that could benefit from your guidance? And, mentorship doesn't even necessarily have to be that formal. It could also kind of be a friendship ultimately. And I learn a lot from my mentees as well. So I think it is a two-way street. I learn industry trends. I learn what interview processes look like for more junior people coming into the private equity industry, and all of that is really helpful for me overall. So it definitely is not a zero-sum game, and I highly recommend starting mentoring if you haven't. And I think as you all experience in your very kind of global mindset in this platform that you all have access to, it would be really interesting to develop mentorship relationships with people, across the world, and who can teach you something that you may not, see in your day-to-day life.
Well, thank you for that. We'll conclude by asking, how can our audience follow the great work that you do?
Yeah, happy to connect with anyone. I'm typically available on LinkedIn. You can shoot me a message. Also, you can connect with me through Greg or others within your university program if that's helpful. And you can also follow what we're doing at Headway on LinkedIn as well.
Well, I want to thank you, Catherine. It was great having you on our fireside chat. We've been discussing private equity pathways and diversity in financial careers with Katherine Relle, U.S. Business Development Director, and now part of Headway Capital. Thank you again, Catherine. It's been great having you. And this will conclude our fireside chat.